The emperor wanted his daughter married happily before he died. His daughter was beautiful. She was kind. She was talented. She was wise. She was in all ways exquisite. And so the emperor wanted to make sure she had a husband worthy of her. So he set a condition. He put out a proclamation to the whole land that whosoever shall bring the blue rose shall marry the princess. Well, all manner of men went seeking the blue rose, and very quickly they found that there was no such thing. There were, at that time, only white roses, red roses, and pink roses. And so the men gave up, except for 3. And that was a powerful warrior, a wealthy and unscrupulous merchant, and the elderly prime minister. Now the warrior had heard that there was a man called the collector who collected all manner of things, and he thought, surely the collector has the blue rose. And so he assembled a small band of swordsmen and bowmen, and he went searching for the home of the collector. And while he was searching, the merchant was searching for the blue rose. He had sent out seekers everywhere to all the shops and all the gardens and all the homes and all the villages, for he had a great deal of money. And none of them found the blue rose. And then he began to use his power in other ways. For he had loaned people money, and to one young man he had loaned a great deal of money, and this young man, the merchant told, "Find the blue rose for me, and I will forgive your debt." And so this poor man, he began looking for the blue rose as well. Now the elderly prime minister thought of a different way. He thought of making the rose. He sought through all the land for the finest maker and painter of porcelain, and he found one, an artist of great talent, and he asked him to make him a cup, and in the bottom of it paint a blue rose. Now, back to the warrior. He went seeking and seeking, and finally he did find the home of the collector. And he assembled his men outside, and they rattled their weapons. And the collector came out, and he said, Why are you doing this? What is going on?" And the warrior said, "I hear that you have the blue rose, and I want it, and I will take it by force if need be." And the collector said, "Yes, I have the blue rose, and you may have it. You don't have to hurt me for it. I'll go get it now." He went back into a vault, and he came out with the blue rose, and he gave it to the warrior, who took his band and headed back toward the palace. Now word reached the merchant that the warrior was coming back, and so he went to the young man to whom he had loaned money, and he said, "Get me that rose by tomorrow morning." And the young man said to his wife, "How am I supposed to find a blue rose? I've looked everywhere." And his wife said, "Well, it's time to get clever then. Don't chemists have potions that they can turn a white rose blue?" And so he found a chemist who could do that very thing. And they put a white rose in it, and the chemist promised that it would be blue by morning. Meanwhile, the merchant went to the porcelain painter, and the porcelain painter said, "It will be ready in the morning." And the next morning all 3 men showed up at the royal palace, and the emperor allowed the warrior to speak first. The warrior said, "I have traveled and sought, and I found the blue rose. Here it is, and I wish to marry the princess." And the emperor said, "I see." And he handed it to his daughter, and he said, "This powerful warrior has brought you what he claims to be the blue rose. Has he accomplished the task?" And the princess looked at it and she said, "This is exquisitely made, but it is not the blue rose, for it is composed entirely of gemstones. I cannot marry you." And the warrior went away in a fury. And the merchant approached, and he handed the emperor a rose of a brilliant blue. And the emperor said to his daughter, "This wealthy merchant has brought you what he claims to be the blue rose. Has he accomplished the task?" And she took it and she said, "This is a beautiful shade of blue, but it is not the blue rose. It is a white rose that has been dipped in poison, and if a bee were to land upon the petals, it would die of the fumes. I cannot marry you." And the merchant went away in a fury. And the prime minister approached and he said, "I have brought this gift to the princess, and I wish for her to marry me." And the emperor said, This prime minister has brought you what he claims to be the blue rose. Has he accomplished the task?" And the princess looked at it and she said, "This is the most beautiful piece of porcelain I have ever seen in my life. If you will allow me to keep it, I will use it to place the blue rose in when I receive it. But I cannot marry you." And so the prime minister went away, sadly. And now the princess went out into the garden and she sat pondering what would happen next, for surely no one would be able to bring her the blue rose. And she heard a sound, the sound of a flute. And in seeking for it, she realized it was outside the garden walls. She climbed a tree a little ways, just high enough to look over the wall, and there she saw a young man playing the flute. And she gave a delicate cough, and he heard her and looked up, and she pointed toward the door, and she opened it for him. And the two of them sat in the garden, and they talked the whole night through. And they realized that they were alike in everything. And the young man said, "I wish to speak with your father." And the princess said, "Oh dear, there is a condition that my father has made, that a man cannot marry me until he brings me the blue rose." And the man said, "Is that all? Well, I can do that." And the next day he came, and he said, "Your Majesty, I have brought the blue rose, and I wish to have your daughter's hand in marriage." And the emperor said to his daughter, "This young man has brought what he claims to be the blue rose. Has he accomplished the task?" And she took the rose and she said, "Yes, this is indeed the blue rose." But the warrior and the merchant and the prime minister said, Wait, no, that's not the blue rose, that's a white rose." And the princess looked at them and she said, "I say it's the blue rose." Well, they could not argue with that, for everyone knows that the princess's sight is the most acute in the kingdom. And so they were married, and they were very happy, and they lived in a cottage covered with white roses. And the emperor died content.